Do you find it difficult to play up-tempo jazz? If so, you're not alone. I struggled with this for a long time. Today I'm going to show you several techniques and exercises that will really help you with up-tempo playing. By the way, if you're new to Brad Allen Drums, I'm a Kansas City jazz drummer. I'm also a private teacher who has helped many students master the art of jazz drumming, including my student Zach Forsyth, who became a professional drummer and toured China with trumpeter Lee Sachuan. Okay, the first technique that I'd recommend for playing up-tempo jazz is French grip. I've got a whole video about French grip. Just follow the link in the video or in the notes below to learn the grip. The French grip is great for short bursts of notes. It's infinitely easier to play up-tempo jazz with this grip than the German matched grip, so definitely check that out if you haven't yet. Much of playing up-tempo jazz has to do with stick technique, by the way. And if you're looking to really get your hands together, I have 10 exercises that will really help you with that. And these are the same type of exercises that helped my student Matthew Lum win a fastest hands drumming competition 2 years in a row. Just follow the link in the video or in the comments below to get a free copy. Okay, the next technique is very simple. Instead of playing the standard jazz rhythm on the ride cymbal, you can simply play quarter notes some of the time. Even playing quarter notes part of the time is easier than trying to maintain that strict jazz swing rhythm 100% of the time at breakneck tempos. The first person I ever heard do this was Steve Gadd. I believe it was on a recording called Burning for Buddy. At the time I heard it, I remember thinking if it's good enough for Steve Gadd, then it's good enough for any drummer, because in my mind, Steve Gadd's one of the greatest drummers who ever lived. I've also found that playing quarter notes instead of your standard jazz ride rhythm in an up-tempo tune is especially effective with a big band. It makes it easier for the band to hear the groove and to stay together. So it's definitely an option. The third technique is to modify the basic jazz cymbal rhythms and all the rhythms you play for up-tempo playing. When you play either slow or medium tempo jazz, it's basically based on the shuffle rhythm like this. So the jazz cymbal rhythm is also based on that. And your solos at that tempo are going to be similar to that. They're also going to be based on that shuffle rhythm. Now that works fine as long as the tempo isn't too fast. As it gets faster, what's going to happen is it starts to even out. It becomes more like even eighth notes or even 16th notes. I'll demonstrate starting slow and gradually speeding up. Listen how the rhythm evens out at the fast tempos. And what I did for several years is every day I would actually start off very slow and gradually move the metronome up to basically as fast as I could go. And that's how you really develop it. Okay, the next technique has to do with the hi-hat. Basically, for up-tempo jazz, you can develop your hi-hat pattern exactly the way you developed a ride cymbal pattern. At a slow tempo, it should sound like this. Up to a certain tempo, it works really well like that. It starts to sound to my ear a little bit muddy after a certain tempo. It's also hard to play cleanly with one hand. So after a certain tempo, I actually break the pattern up between my two hands. I'm playing the same pattern, but I'm basically playing 2 and 4 with the left hand. And from what I understand, this is the way Buddy Rich and Louie Bellson used to do it at faster tempos as well. I'll demonstrate at different tempos here. Now, the way that most jazz drummers probably played this, including Buddy Rich, was with the left hand underneath the hi-hat. Evidently, they like that sound. I don't do that much anymore myself. I usually keep the hands on top. I find that by keeping my left hand on top, it lends itself to a lot more patterns. The next technique has to do with playing interactively rather than independently. The way most people learn how to play jazz is to keep the ride cymbal pattern going all the time and never deviate from that. While you're playing that, you play different things with the left hand and different things with the bass drum and maybe the hi-hat without making any variations in this right hand. That is a good thing to practice. It gives you more control over the drum set. It's always a valid thing to play. It works really well for slower tempos and for medium tempos. I eventually realized at very fast tempos, it was very hard to maintain that strict jazz ride cymbal rhythm all the time. I found it to be very restrictive and rather limited in what I could do with the other limbs. So eventually I learned to play more interactively. The first time I became aware of this method was in a book by Bob Moses called Drum Wisdom. I'm going to demonstrate this for you. I'm going to do it at a slower tempo for you first. You can play basically very interactively with the other limbs while keeping the hi-hat going on 2 and 4. So the hi-hat is independent, but it's the only thing that's really independent. For an even more modern approach, you can make the hi-hat part of the overall flow and part of your overall pattern and not keep it going on 2 and 4. You can practice specific exercises that'll help you with this, but another way to practice is simply to put on a metronome and try to get comfortable improvising and soloing at all different tempos. Start very simple. Start by playing just the ride cymbal and the hi-hat and try to get very comfortable with this without adding the snare drum or the bass drum. Faster. Then try adding some snare drum notes. Just add them wherever it's comfortable. Sometimes the snare will play in unison with the ride cymbal, and sometimes you'll break the rhythm up between the snare and the ride. Always think of what you're playing as one rhythm voiced on different surfaces. Don't think of the snare and the ride as playing two different rhythms. Okay, next leave out the snare. Do the same thing, only add some notes on the bass drum instead of the snare. Then add the snare and the bass notes. Again, start very simple. When you're comfortable with that, try going back again to just the ride cymbal. Stop playing the hi-hat on 2 and 4 and start adding some notes on the hi-hat just like you did earlier with the snare. Then try the ride cymbal with some notes on the hi-hat and some on the snare. Then the ride with the hi-hat and the bass. And last, put it all together. Notice that through all these exercises, the ride cymbal is the main voice. The other limbs are just kind of icing on the cake. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's definitely easier to play up-tempo jazz if you really have your hand technique together. You can get 10 of my best exercises for stick control absolutely free. Just follow the link in the video or in the comments below to get a free copy. Please comment below and tell me what your favorite up-tempo jazz recording is. Or if you want, just comment helpful, and that would also really be awesome. My favorite is actually Tony Williams on drums with Miles Davis when he was just 17 years old. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for new videos every week. Thank you for watching, and I have another video on jazz comping that I think you'll also find really helpful. Please watch that next, and we'll see you for the next video.